Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Coaching Observer. Today, just before the World Cup breaks, we are talking about New Zealand versus France, the biggest match, the opening match, host versus previous two-time champion. You tell me what you think is going to happen. I'm about to tell you what I think is going to happen. Next thing we'll be covering is the lineups. So for France, we have Thomas Ramos at 15, with Pinot at 14, Ficot at 13, Moefana at 12, Villiers at 11, and coming in at 10 is Jalibert. The well-known Antoine Dupont captaining his team at 9, with Aldred at 8, Olivier at 7, Cross at 6, Flament at 5, Waki at 4, Antonio at 3, Marchant at 2, and Vardy at 1. For the New Zealand lineup, we have the well-known Beauden Barrett starting at 15, Will Jordan at 14, Rico Ioane at 13, Anton Leonard-Brown at 12, we got Talia at 11, we got Richie Mo'unga at 10, Aaron Smith, Mr. Consistency at 9, we got Ardie Sevilla at 8, Sam Kane at 7, and we have Papalia at 6, as well as Scott Barrett at 5, Sam Whitelock at 4, Lauilala at 3, Taylor at 2, and De Groot starting in the loose head. Let's take a look at our injury list. Obviously, there's some massive injuries coming in for France, which are game changers, and recently in the week, there's also some New Zealand injuries that are making headlines. The biggest one that we all know is Romain Ntamak, right, who plays number 10 for France, who is really the general on attack and on defense for them, and who's just got that X factor and that wow factor of he can change a game just with the inside-outside step, scoring a try just like he did in the French final. He's unfortunately out with the ACL and ruled out for the entire World Cup. They've been trying to find a replacement for him and have been looking at different options in this position throughout all the warm-up games leading up to the World Cup. However, is this going to be a deciding factor? I personally think so. Another injury that just came into the headlines this week for New Zealand is that of Jordie Barrett, playing centre for New Zealand, although we know that he can play many positions, including 15. He's been on the wing before. He's generally just a very good utility player. I don't think he's going to be out for the entire World Cup. However, he's definitely not going to be there for the opener, according to news sources. And is he going to have a major impact? We saw that Anton Leonard-Brown is coming in. He's very well experienced. He's very good. However, does this impact the bench that they bring? Another injury for New Zealand is that of Imani Narawa, who plays out on wing, who's been ruled out for this game for his back injury and might come back throughout the tournament depending on how his rehab goes. Another controversial thing that's not missing a game but maybe should have is that of Scott Barrett, who's starting up for New Zealand in the lock position. However, after receiving 2 yellows turning into a red, not being upheld to miss at least one match is quite controversial if we think about what's happened to Farrell and other players leading up to the World Cup. What are the key strategies that either France or New Zealand are going to follow in this game? So what have we really seen in regards to the warm-up games? We can't go too much on the SA game from New Zealand. They didn't have much ball, and when they did, they coughed it up. On attack, they were smothered on defense, so they couldn't really get out where they needed to be. And then decision-making from players under pressure wasn't great. Let's look at France versus Australia. Did Australia really do what they needed to? Did France play the team that they wanted to? These are interesting questions looking up leading to the World Cup. So, to me, France has got one of the most beautiful attacking strategies. I call it the roll-on attack. If you look at their runners and how they run through the back line and all the way to the wing, creating a massive overlap, they do it brilliantly. If New Zealand chooses the wrong defense or they choose the wrong man to defend, that overlap hits or someone straight through the gap. I hope New Zealand specifically looks at how to defend their roll-on attack and make sure that the overlap doesn't concur. And if it does, how do you defend against that? Firstly. Secondly, New Zealand at breakdown. New Zealand one-off runners, right? And then obviously New Zealand's backline players with regards to how quick they distribute the ball into the channel, into the wing channel, and how that wing manipulates space as soon as he has the ball. Let's talk strategy. So we know we've got two main element strategies. The one is kicking. The other one is running. That's pretty much straightforward. Now, how are they going to use it and what's the difference going to be? So traditionally we know that both New Zealand and France really enjoy the running game. How they do it differs quite a bit. If I look at France, the way that they attack, and I love this, is called a roll-on attack, or at least that's what I'll coin it. A roll-on attack means that they continuously have runners rolling behind their back to eventually create a huge overlap on the wing where maybe they can exploit the space. Now, I find that interesting. On defense, if I was New Zealand and I'm not thinking about the man that I need to defend, or I don't know where the ball's going, and I miss my man, there's going to be a gap, or the guy with the roll on is going to hit that gap and just take the space. Now, on the other side, how does New Zealand attack? So generally what they do is they love, I call it stacked attack. Now, on a stacked attack, what they do is they got two dummy runners and it goes straight behind their back to two oncoming runners, and they can just do that again and again. So it depends. Does Aaron Smith want to hit the first two runners who are generally going to be forwards, or do they just screen run, goes behind their back, they have two more forwards coming on, plays back onto two more backline players, or skip pass onto that wing, or what I've also seen them do, especially with Richie there, he puts that grubber through all the way for that wing into that small space behind the wing as soon as he starts coming up into that space. I have also seen that France has kind of been keeping this roll on attack away in their warm-up games leading to the World Cup. So I'm wondering if they're going to perfect it. I'm wondering if they're going to go away from it and just use their huge forwards in just two-man pods that I've seen them do as well. I feel that France has got quite a flair with regards to the wings and how they attack. Is Jalibert going to be able to put the kick in where they want it? I don't think so. So I think they're going to try and manipulate space and make sure that they get their wings into the tramline space on a one-on-one situation or just behind them as well. We'll see how they do this, if they're going to use a forward to put a wing into space, or if they're going to use a blind screen runner from 13 or 12 to get that wing into space as well. Now, New Zealand, on the other hand, that can kind of go anywhere. They have backline players and forward players who are very swift with the ball. If you think about Ardie Savea as a traditional 8, I disagree. Take Dwayne Vermeulen, take Ardie Savea all day, every day. Why? He is the perfect linking player. Who used to do this brilliantly? Brodie Retallick. Does he do it so much anymore? No. Why? Because Ardie is there. Ardie will play that weird space where if he doesn't want to carry, he'll be that linking player that puts the backline into space, or he has a one-off runner on him where he generally puts it into space, reminding me of the way Sonny Ball used to play. And Ardie Savea is really a force to be reckoned with if you can't tackle him on the first time. Now, what else do they have in their pocket? Like I said, Richie Mo'unga in his kicking game at the moment is phenomenal. If it's aerial on the wings, which I don't think they're going to do because France is pretty good underneath the high ball, right? I do think that he might do a few stab kicks with the two centers who are very good. Although we're missing out Geordie this time, there's always that small space behind a defensive line, and Richie Mo'unga likes really exploiting that space. Just putting in a small stab behind there, just trying to see if we can get there before the 15 or before the counterparts of the defense get in there as well, which is generally the 8 or the 9, whoever's tracking behind the defensive line. Let's talk about set pieces and loose play. So, who are kings of rucks and who are kings of the grey space? How many times did South Africans, Australians, or even the Argentinians lose their mind in championship when New Zealand used to play the funniest dark arts around the rucks and they never got blown? The way they'd push the players, the way they'd keep them, the way they'd even hold on to the foot into the ruck, they used to do these dark arts underneath Steve Hansen all day, and it used to work. I think that referees are now a bit more up to date with what they do, and they're getting blown for it a lot more often. So again, can France really match what New Zealand bring at ruck time? Is it going to be intense? I think it's definitely a forward battle, and that's where it starts off with. New Zealand is going to try to slow down France's ball as much as they can, try to disrupt as much as they can, similar to what South Africa have been doing, and we've seen Etzebeth pull shirts over faces a few times. Other elements towards the ruck that we need to look at is how they're going to defend. Now, France has got a very immobile, slow front row, and that's mismatch century for anyone, right? Does New Zealand bring the same? Not quite. Yeah, heavy, but they don't generally play in the same defensive system that France do. I have a feeling that although Aaron Smith might not snipe, there's going to be 45 angle runners that will definitely be used as soon as they see the props within those channels. Watch for the second or third channel running that just creates that mismatch opportunity against the prop. On the other hand, I do think that France and their defensive system doesn't quite push up as hard as what New Zealand do. However, if we look at the Australian games or the Fijian games, France closed down space very well. But New Zealand enjoy that. New Zealand almost invites that in. Why? Like I said, they're going to bring the first two screen runners, play behind their back, defense is stagnant behind them, play behind them, and then they'll get around them, right? Now, New Zealand on defense, on the other hand, they love closing down space. What do France want to do? They've got heavy runners within the front row, and they want to use them. Use them to the benefit until there's space enough to do the roll on and get the ball out to the wide. Now that we covered attack, why don't we dive straight into defense? So we know that sometimes the defense can definitely be our offense. If you think about the New Zealand South African game, what did South Africa get right? Every time New Zealand got the ball, they were on the back foot, right? So their big pressure defense really worked against New Zealand. Do you think France is going to incorporate something similar? I don't. I don't think that they have the same players that we do that are able to maintain that at a fitness level and also close down the space, not to create mismatches. So, in my opinion, France's forwards are a bit heavier than what they generally are with regards to other teams, and I think that kills your line speed. Are those forwards able to do it for a full 60 minutes before the sub comes? I don't think so. I think that they'll employ a bit of different strategy. Maybe backline might shoot up a bit quicker, and they'll invite the forwards to come in for the ruck situation. However, that's a whole other ball game by itself. How will New Zealand defend? New Zealand generally loves loose players, right? If you think about their loose trio, even their locks, even their hooker, I mean, these are all pretty much loose forwards. So they love getting up into your face, they love closing down space, and I think that's exactly what they're going to do. Another injury for France is that of Willemse at lock. We know what South Africans bring at lock and the real enforcer role that they play in carrying and just being a force to be reckoned with on the field. I'm sure they'll feel that they'll be missing him out at line-out time, scrum time, and especially within the loose. Now, the nice thing about this is that the roll-on attack that France wants to employ pretty much kills any pressure type of defense. Why? Because if they shoot up and the roll-on hits, they're going to miss their man and the overlap is going to happen. So, what we saw Fiji did against France, especially with this roll on in anticipation, is they sat deep and they waited. So, the first 2 or 3 players would push up just to make sure that the pod doesn't get the ball. As soon as they started their roll on, their 10, 12, 13, 14, even 15 kind of sat back and invited them into a space. I found this very interesting from Fiji, but yet effective, because now France didn't have moving backwards, and now they had to run into space and Fiji would kill that space. Is New Zealand going to adopt the same, or are they going to stick with their pressure defense and maybe allow the overlap to happen? Now, French defenders, which are generally a bit heavier, I feel are going to allow us a lot of mismatches. So is New Zealand going to exploit this? Are they going to put up their loose fast forwards, or are they going to even try and get into the tram line a lot quicker? I think something that the French defense needs to look out for is New Zealand playing back into that blind space, trying to get a mismatch, right? Any slow forward who's been working too hard, who's now suddenly just taking a bit of a rest element on the blind side. Watch New Zealand see that, identify that, and try exploit and come into that. What's going to happen? You're going to get a loose forward onto a prop, right? Loose forward's going to beat him. Now wing has to come in and defend that. What does the loose forward do? Play the wing into space, and he's gone. So these are the type of things that I think we must look out for. Watch how France is going to defend against New Zealand. Are they going to be able to keep up, right? Are there mismatches going to come? On the other hand, with New Zealand, are they going to do the normal press push that they usually do? Or is France's roll-on going to make them do something else? Are they going to hold the way Fiji held and invite them into space and try to turn over the ball there? Well, let's see. Now for my favorite part. So looking at the different positions and, what are really the key positions to look at is definitely for me number 9. If we look at our scrum off position, what are the traditional roles of a scrum off? Distribution, check. Box kicks, check, right? What else do they need to do? They need to general the forwards on defense and on attack, have to be able to snipe, good decision making. I mean, they are pivotal to the game. Now, on the one hand, we have Aaron Smith. Phenomenal. How many years has this guy been playing for New Zealand at 9? How many World Cups has he attended? How many World Cups has he won? To me, he's always been Mr. Consistency. I don't think there's a more consistent 9 for so many years in the world of rugby. It has been insane what he can achieve. He can snipe. His passing attributes, his kicking attributes, everything he brings is just phenomenal for the team, and it's always a go-forward ball. Now, on the other side, currently most people's favorite 9, currently the 9 that is just at the top of his game and really brings the element for France is Antoine Dupont. Not only is he playing number 9, but he has to captain his team as well. The responsibility on this man's shoulders is pretty much the entire French team. He is responsible for decision making not only in the game, through penalties, he has to talk and maintain a relationship with the ref. There's so many elements that Antoine Dupont has to do on top of playing his game. Now, we all know Antoine Dupont is a very consistent player, and what I like about him, he has that small little X factor, that small little fire in him, where he can just hit a gap, step. We've seen him hand off with his big guns. He's just a player at the moment, at the peak of his game, and I think that he's going to take his role amazingly, especially with Ntamak being out currently. Now, who's going to win between the two? That's going to be quite a battle. I don't foresee either one of them scoring a try with a snipe, although they have done it in the past. I think that they are just going to be the two general, and I definitely think they're going to make a few tackles. I can see Anton Dupont coming in there, making a few hits that he needs to do. Aaron Smith generally shies away a bit from the tackling, but he's always there at the right place at the right time with regards to support line running and just great decision making when he sees his one-off runners running certain lines that he needs to hit. Dupont at the other time, he is just a live wire. He will be around your rucks, he will be looking at you, he'll be testing you all the time, and he will do things that other traditional lines just don't do. He is strong for a number 9, although not the tallest player. If I compare him to other number 9s, if you're looking at Faf from South Africa, TJ Paranaro is not going at the moment, but if you're looking at the Weber, if you're looking at, what's the redhead's name? Finch. The redhead from New Zealand. Okay, plays 9 as well. Where was I?
Look at the 9s across the board.
Look at the 9s across the board who are generally playing. Faf also forced to be reckoned with. Small man syndrome. He just wants to tackle anything that moves, despite that he probably shouldn't right now. Right? Does Aaron Smith do that? Not really. Dupont definitely brings that element. Let's look at Nick White. Although there's so much controversy around Nick White and that moustache of his, I think people don't understand his rugby IQ. Nick White probably has a very high rugby IQ that people are surpassing at the moment, especially with his tactical kicking, with looking at offside, with playing their area in the grey. Dupont also does this. Aaron Smith tactically like that? Aaron Smith is tactically also a master at decision making. He will play the grey areas to the death of it. If it's around a ruck, if it's around a scrum, watch how many penalties. Let's watch what the penalty count is going to be on how many times a scrum off forces a penalty, whether it's a ruck, whether it's an open play, whether it's at a scrum. I think this is something we should really look out for, especially that we know such an intense match is all about penalties, conversions, and what are the decision making behind that. Are they going to scrum? Are they going to do the line out? Or are we just going to see typical test match rugby and it's going to be 3 points at a time? Something else I'd like to bring up with regards to the position of 9 and what we've seen, especially in the 2019 World Cup, is the aerial battle. Now, we know that at the moment, if you're a 9 and your box kicks aren't specifically on point, you're probably not going to get selected. Now, if we take Dupont versus Aaron Smith on box kicks, who usually comes out on top? Now, there's been examples of both kicking aerially brilliantly, but a kick is only as good as its chase. And you need to think about who are the wings on either side receiving that chase. Now, I think that the French wings are phenomenal in the air and good return kicks and good one-on-one. However, New Zealand, we can say the same. If we look at their lineup, they didn't go for the traditional Clark on the wing, right? Why? He's not a good aerial man. So if we look at the aerial battle and the kicks, I think that it's a pretty even. If we're looking at our box kicks over here, what can end is small spaces. What can be quite a considering factor is the 50-22. Now, I've seen both times Aaron Smith and Dupont looking up, seeing the space and being able to execute their kick to get the 50-22, bam, attacking option right into the 22 of the opponent, and sometimes even a try coming from it. So let's see who's winning that battle. And I was going to say, so let's just see who's going to win that battle. Stop. In summary, looking at the 9s, let's just think about a few key... I'm saying let's think too much. In summary, when looking at the 9s, I want us to draw up a list of what are the things we should be looking out for in case of... What are the things we should be looking out for on who's going to win this race? What are the type of things we should be looking out for? How did I start this? When comparing our 9s. When comparing our 9s, let's look at a... When comparing the 9s, let's draw up a key list of things on to see who's going to win this race, right? Firstly, I want to see who's going to hit the right lines at the right time and how are they going to put them into space. That's not what I wanted to say. That list is fine. First up. First up, I want to think about passing accuracy, especially when it counts. 22 or 22. Is your defensive 22? Is it attacking 22? We all know that the 9's pass is going to make or break either a try being scored or an exit not being made, right? So let's look at passing accuracy, especially in the crunch area. Secondly, aerial kicks. Let's see how many box kicks are going exactly pinpoint where they need to be them, or how many are going too high or too shallow. I definitely think that's an element we need to look at. Thirdly, I want to see support line running. I want to see Aaron Smith versus DuPont and support line running, because I got a feeling if there's a line break and DuPont is on there, he might just get a try on the left and the right of his support runner. Last but not least, generaling on attack. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, but Aaron Smith within the opposition 22 is one of the best generals you've seen. He slows it down, he's cool, calm and collected, right? And he can make sure that his forwards and his backline do the right decisions at the right time. We've seen it countless times. Now, the only thing I don't know with all the pressure on DuPont is, will he be able to do the same thing? Can he keep such a young pack cool, calm and collected when it's white line fever time? Is he able to put a new 10 who's not Intamak and on the front foot, especially within the 22 where they need to attack, and more specifically if they need to exit? The next key position to look at is that of fly-off. We have Richie Mo'unga versus Intamak. Sadly not. We have Richie Mo'unga versus Jalibert. So traditionally, these two are very different. I mean, Jalibert is coming in here not always being a starter. I mean, he doesn't even kick for poles. If we look at kicking accuracy and kicking percentages, we know that test match rugby is won by penalty kicks. Richie Mo'unga kicks brilliantly, right? Unfortunately, Jalibert is not going to kick. It's usually Ramos that kicks out from 15, and he also has very good kicking accuracy and percentage. Now, in game play, Richie Mo'unga has got a massive background and he has come into his role very nicely. I mean, when he was younger, was he this consistent? Was he this cool, calm, and collected? No, he wasn't. So I feel that currently at his age and his progression in the team is perfect for this World Cup. I think he's the guy to lead them out on 10, and they even get fired up to play with him. You can definitely see this with regards to his centre pairing and his wings. I've got a feeling that there's definitely going to be a cross kick try if the penalty comes in the 22. And I also feel that if they don't look at him and they don't look out for his step on that inside channel, or the 6, 7 or 8 doesn't close down that inside channel for the 10, he might just as well be gone and get a one-on-one with Ramos, which I'm going to back him on this one. Now, let's look at Jalibert, right? I think that he's there just to play the distribution game. I don't think he's going to do anything wild, anything crazy. I definitely don't think he's going to bring the attacking aspect that Ntamak would have brought. And also, I just think that he just needs to do positive motions on anything that he can. He's going to focus on getting the boys into the right place of the field. He's going to focus on his exits, right? And then obviously decision-making with regards to the 22. I just think he's going to play the back line. I don't know how many one-off runners there's going to be, but we're going to see how he's going to execute that, especially against Richie Mo'unga. Now, I want to know, can they control Richie Mo'unga? Can they contain him, right? And how is New Zealand going to put pressure on Jalibert coming in at 10, not letting it be his primary role? I think they're definitely going to target that. And let's see how many late hits they're going to do on him as well. Am I saying and too much?
Don't stress about it.
Let's quickly do this again. The second key role that we have to look at is that of fly-offs. We have Richie Mo'unga on the one side and, sadly, not Ntamak. We are going with Jalibert on 10. So these two players traditionally are extremely different when it comes to the game. I feel Richie Mo'unga has really come into his age. Look at the younger... Look at the younger Richie Mo'unga. Not cool, not calm, not collected, sometimes very bad decision making, but at the moment, definitely a key 10 for this World Cup. I think that he's the guy that New Zealand are going to rally behind, and I think he's an extremely expensive player. He's able to do almost everything. Left foot, right foot, grubbers, stab kicks, one-on-ones, step, and he has gas to burn. I think Richie Mo'unga is a real contender in this match, and we'll see if France are able to contain him. Richie Mo'unga has a great sense for direction. Has a great eye for space. Richie Mo'unga has a great eye for space and generally gets quite a few 50-22s. Not only that, I think that if the right penalty comes at the right time in the 22, we are definitely on for a cross kick try. I don't know how many times Richie's gotten this right. He sees it, the call is there, and he is pinpoint accurate into that corner. I definitely think that that's a big tick on his mark. If I'm looking at Jalibert, I don't think we're going to see too much flair from him. I think that he's going to be cautious. I think that the team just... I think he's going to play quite cautious. He will just play the distribution game and make sure his team is playing in the right areas at the right times. Whether it's the exits, whether it's the midfield plays, but nothing too special. No weird grubbers coming off. I can't see a kick chase coming off. And they don't really do the cross kicks. They really depend on their rolling running system and making sure that he hits his one-off runners when he needs to. Are they going to put... A key aspect for New Zealand to take care of is Jalibert. Not because he's going to be that X factor, but because he's a little bit out of position. I think if the New Zealand 6, 7 and 8 can really put pressure on Jalibert, they might just shut down the game over there and he might just fold. On the other hand, Richie Mo'unga, if the Lucies of the French team doesn't cover in that inside gap, watch him exploit the space within the blind side or with inside the channel of the 10, and he'll definitely make that work. We can also see the one-off runners coming in onto that far left or the far blind channels, and Richie Mo'unga will put them into space and also support line run on them as well. Some of the open play strategies I think that they're going to incorporate is definitely looking into the blind side for New Zealand. I definitely think there's going to be slow, heavy forwards, especially tired forwards within that blind side area, which I call the tram line, right? The outline towards the 15 line I call the tram line. I think that if France isn't careful, we call it a bit of a snapback. I think New Zealand might snap back into that blindside area and really manipulate a loose forward and a wing against a bit of the slower forwards. On France's side, they are going to want to attack the tram lines as well, but once they work wide and open play. Once they've done the hard work with their forwards, once they've done the hard work with their big centers like Foucault, they're definitely going to start looking at how they're going to manipulate space within those wide channels, or maybe even take a few kicks if it's available just behind the defensive line so that their wings can step up on that. The French wings are also phenomenal in the air. For me, even better than New Zealand wings. So what I do expect as well is box kicks on those blind channels or in the tramline channels, and I also expect a bit of stab kicks if Jalibert is able to really execute it the way he needs to. Other open play things I think we really need to look at is ruck time. The New Zealanders are completely zoned in on looking at all the grey areas at ruck time. I think they will be phenomenal at it. I think that the ruck times of France are really going to be under pressure with regards to turnovers. And I also think that on the other side of that, if France isn't careful, there's going to be short one-off runners that Aaron Smith will just be able to put into space, especially coming onto a 45 if they are too heavy, too slow, and not covering the gaps that they need to. These are things that I'm quite excited to look for in the open play. It's always interesting. You know, I was watching a New Zealand game this morning, Waikato against Wellington, and they love keeping the ball alive. This is almost within the fiber and being of New Zealand is they'll just do one-off runners, offload, not quite Fijian style, but they love offloading and keeping boys into space and just completely tiring out defense. I think this is something that they'll do against the heavy France, keeping the ball alive, making the big boys move left to right as quick as possible, right? And then especially start exploding and exploiting those spaces that are going to open up. So, big thing, the prediction for the opening game, home ground for France versus one of the almighty teams in the entire world, the All Blacks, who have won the World Cup multiple times. What is the prediction? So I definitely think New Zealand is taking this one. Margin, well, I'm thinking about 12 to 14 points. My end prediction is either 22 or 24 to 10 points. I think the first half is going to be quite slow with a few penalties, and it might open up about the last 15 minutes of the game going towards New Zealand style. I do not think that the bench of France is going to have the impact that they need. However, I do think that New Zealand is going to pump up at least one or two tries within the last quarter of the game. I'd like to thank everyone for watching my first video. I truly hope it was insightful, that you learned, and that you agree with me on most of my predictions. However, if you disagree, please put it in the comments there. Let's look at it, and hey, we'll only know after the game. I can't wait to post my second video as well, reflecting on the game, looking at the strategy that they finally employed and what they did differently. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel for all the future updates. Thanks, guys.